Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 2 of the Q&A, so let's go ahead and get to the first question. Alright. Hey Jason, started some Bulgarian training now. Can I do 3 times a week bench press plus rows? Oh, sorry, he said squat bench press and rows, and 2 times a week front squat, push press, chin-ups, and trap bar deadlift. Goals are improving arms, forearms, my entire shoulder girdle, and of course, most importantly, general strength. Question is not about the specific lifts, but rather how much variety I can incorporate. If you're going to do a 5-day a week, if you want to do 3 days a week of the same lifts and then 2 days a week of a different set of lifts, that's probably fine. The main thing to consider here, though, is that any lift that you're really serious about improving dramatically, you're going to want at least 3 days a week, if not 4. So you can get away with what you're doing. It's fine. But the thing is, like those secondary days, you might even want to rotate through some of those as far as your second lifts and everything go. Meaning, if you're going to change variations, obviously, those ones you're doing 3 days a week are obviously the most important to you, and you're just trying to build general muscle and strength and some slightly different motor patterns on that second set of days. So what you might even want to do, if you want a lot of exercise variety, you could even use those exercises you're doing twice a week. You could change those around and actually rotate through different exercises through different like 3-week blocks and things like that on those, and just keep your other days constant. But yeah, you can certainly do it that way with the exercise variety that you're doing. That is definitely one way to do it. Although keeping in mind, you do want a very, very high frequency on the exercises that are most important to you. Like for me, there's a reason I actually do the regular back squat, low bar squat 6 or 7 days a week on mine, because it's the most important to me right now. It's the reason I bench press 6 days a week. It's a really important lift to me right now. So that's the way that you've got to look at it and prioritize your frequency of individual lifts on this type of training. All right, next question. Hey Jason, if half squats are bad for your knees, what about the conventional deadlift? You've covered how the push press isn't terrible for your knees, even though it's a partial for the legs. The main reason being that one can generally squat far more than they can push press. The deadlift is often a partial, above parallel for me, for the legs, loaded with more weight than one can generally squat. Wouldn't this be just as bad for one's knees long term as the heavy half squats? No, and I think you need to go back and really look at what we're saying, anyone who talks about the half squat in the knees. The deadlift is a concentric base exercise, and you have to get the bar around your knees. So there's no way for you to jut your knees forward under the load. You can't. It would hit the bar. And you're not doing it eccentrically. I mean, deadlifts, you're not lowering the weight under control, right? You're not doing a slow, controlled, eccentric and letting your knees jut forward and all that. When you half squat, what happens is to stop the weight halfway, because that's not a natural stopping pattern, and people are doing half squats because they're not strong enough to squat the weight they're lifting. In order to bring the weight to a stop, you're forced to jut your knees forward, right? They jut way forward, and you're pushing them forward and causing excessive amounts of knee slide and then shearing stress, because that's also the point where your knee joint is most subject to shearing stress, near that 45-degree mark. So that's what causes it. On a deadlift, you're lifting from the floor. It's concentric, and you are using the hip hinge, not necessarily a squat, to pull it past your knees, right? And your knees can't jut forward because they would hit the bar. So again, you're confusing the eccentric rep to where the eccentric loading and you slowing the weight down is forcing your knees forward with a heavy weight on a half squat, versus a deadlift where it's concentric and you're just pulling it from the floor, and you're forced to keep your knees back so that the barbell can clear it. Again, it might be somewhat different if you were doing really heavy deadlifts with dumbbells, right? With dumbbells and straps, and then trying to do a slow controlled eccentric. That might cause it. But even then, you're tending to do a hip hinge forward on a deadlift, and your torso is out in front of your knees anyways, and the knees aren't jutting forward. Totally different biomechanics. Just get a video and watch someone from the side do heavy half squats, and then video someone from the side doing deadlifts, and you'll see the difference of what I'm talking about as far as knee position. They're nothing alike. All right, next question. I have recently switched from primary high bar back squats to front squats due to injury. I'm hitting daily numbers that are around 20% less weight, but my knees are taking a beating. I've had problems with my knees since I was a teenager. Is the extra stress on the knees normal? Is it bad form or just too much basketball 15 to 25 years ago? All right, if you have a history of major knee problems, you need to pick a different variation to the squat than you're doing. High bar squats put a fair amount of stress on the knees. It's not horrifically bad, and as long as you have healthy knees, it's usually fine. If you're starting to get some tendonitis or knee problems, they're not necessarily always your best choice, and front squats are even worse. Because these are completely quad dominant variations of the squat, they put more stress on your knees. They're going to cause more inflammation of the connective tissue around the knee. So if you have a history of knee problems, you need to be low bar squatting. Go learn how to low bar squat. That's what you need to do. That's what's going to sort you out. So anyone with a history of knee problems, you need to be avoiding these completely quad dominant squats. And what I want people to understand there is that the quads are hit very, very hard on a heavy low bar squat, but things like the hips take more of the load as far as the joint goes, so it's easier on your knees because the load is more evenly dispersed across a couple of different joints rather than the knees being forced to take more of it. So yeah, you need to drop the front squats and go to low bar squats. You need to figure out how to get them done. That should sort you right out. All right, next question. Hey Blaha, love the channel and your Patreon. I've been running the cutting version of your program for just over 3 months. I came in deconditioned. I'm now the strongest I have been to date, and 15 pounds on average lighter, down from 220-ish to 195-ish. Sorry, I said 210-ish, not 195-ish. At 6 foot tall. I'm heading to Vegas for a week for my 30th birthday, partially the reason for my cut. I don't plan on going apeshit. However, it's a nice breakaway from the cut. My question is with respect to what should I do when I get back? My numbers have plateaued given the amount of cutting. 175 for his squats, 145 bench, 195 for the deadlifts. These are all for his 5-rep work sets. Do you recommend for transitioning to maintenance calories or into a conservative bulk phase? I've never bulked since sticking with my training. I'd like to see these numbers explode. Thanks, big guy. Yeah, man, ease into a small calorie surplus. Ease into a small surplus. And I don't mean you don't need a big one. You're down 15 pounds, so you know about where your maintenance is. Start gaining, a pound every 2 weeks. If you eat just enough to put on about 1 pound every 2 weeks, ease into a nice slow bulk, your numbers are going to blow up. They're going to blow up. You're going to go up a lot. I think you're going to notice that plateau is going to disappear. Everything's going to be good, brother. So just jump in, do yourself a nice, slow, clean bulk, and you're going to start putting on size and strength real fast because you've been cutting all this time while making progress. So when those numbers start going up from that, I think you're going to see a real difference. And like I said, just go easy into the bulk. You don't need to gain a bunch of fat. It's not necessary, but you want to put on some solid muscle mass from this point. And now that you've done a 15-pound cut and you've plateaued on your lifts, you're in a good position to make some real serious gains. So go ahead and get it done, brother. All right, next question and last question of the week. I've been doing bent over rows for quite some time. Just recently I've started to feel a huge tightness in my lower back when doing them. I've always been tight in my lower back, but have been getting better as I used to not be able to squat to parallel, which I now can. My question is, how did this happen and how can I fix it? I keep it from happening again. Thanks. Well, tightness in your lower back isn't always a bad thing unless it's really interfering with your other lifts. And it could be that your lower back is just weak. It's a weak link for you. It could be because you're doing a lot of other lifting. You're finally able to squat to depth. You're probably deadlifting, doing things like that. Your lower back is just probably really fatigued. So you've got to start looking at the overall fatigue management of your training. What I would look at first, okay, let's say your lower back is starting to become a problem as far as getting tight, maybe getting a big pump in there on your rows. So maybe go over to a pin lay row. Go to pin lay rows. A lot of guys have to do that. It's really common for people who do a lot of squatting and deadlifting. They start finding because of the other numbers they're lifting, lower back just gets fatigued and it can't always recover. With pin lay rows, yes, your lower back still has to work as a stabilizer on every rep, but you get to reset it on the floor on every rep. So it tends to not cause that same pump from it being under tension the entire time for a full set. So whatever you're doing, 3 reps, 5 reps, 8 rep sets, whatever you're doing, you get a break between every rep so that your lower back doesn't have to stay engaged for the duration of the set. Oh, that'll probably sort you out. That would be the very first thing I would try if this is a problem for you, and it'll probably help a lot. You'll probably notice it immediately. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.